Confirmed that human remains were found about 20 miles from Fort Hood, and it is believed that those remains are those of 20-year-old Private Venessa Guillen.
Venessa Guillen was born on September 30th, 1999 in Houston, Texas. The daughter of Mexican immigrants, Venessa began her education in Houston and later attended Cesar Chavez High School. She was described as brave, friendly, energetic, and athletic, with a love for sports. Venessa harbored a dream of joining the military from a young age, a dream fully supported by her family. In 2018, she graduated from high school with honors. Following her graduation in June, Venessa applied to enlist in the Army and was accepted shortly after. Starting as a private, she swiftly advanced to become a weapons maintenance specialist, excelling in her role at Fort Hood, the nation's largest military base accommodating numerous soldiers. However, at the start of 2020, Venessa's shift in behavior was noticed by her mother, who sensed that something was amiss. Venessa had become withdrawn, had trouble sleeping, and was distant from her family. Eventually, she confided in her mother, sharing that a sergeant on the base had been sexually harassing her. Venessa explained that the sergeant had been monitoring her during exercises, causing discomfort. Despite this revelation, Venessa assured her mother that she would handle the situation without disclosing the sergeant's identity. Unexpectedly, on April 22nd, Venessa disappeared from the military base, leaving her colleagues puzzled by her absence. The day before she went missing, security cameras captured Venessa at a nearby restaurant. She had spoken with her sister, Mara, the night before her disappearance, assuring her that everything seemed fine and there was nothing suspicious. On April 23rd, Venessa's family was notified of her disappearance by the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division, who issued a missing soldier alert. Fort Hood Military Police also involved local law enforcement in the search efforts. A search operation was launched, with military personnel, civilians, and military police participating. Initially, a $15,000 reward was offered for information on Venessa's whereabouts, which was later increased to $25,000. Many questioned how Venessa could vanish from the highly secure military base without being noticed leaving. Equipped with advanced technology, cameras, and numerous checkpoints, it seemed implausible. Venessa's family actively engaged in the search and tirelessly raised awareness. In an interview with the press, Venessa's mother expressed determination to find her daughter alive and even threatened to have Fort Hood base shut down if necessary. The investigation was in full swing, with the FBI teaming up with the military to ramp up the search, swiftly capturing national attention. In the 2 weeks following her disappearance, more than 300 interviews were conducted, and over 10,000 hours were spent on the case. But details remained concealed from the public until later. Venessa was not supposed to be on base on April 22nd, but a sergeant had called her in to work in the armory. A witness reported seeing her leave the room and head towards another to verify some equipment serial numbers. This room was under the control of Aaron David Robinson, a 20-year-old combat engineer like Venessa. That evening, Venessa left her bank card, military ID, and keys in the armory following Aaron's request and going to his room. Aaron claimed Venessa entered, helped him with the serial numbers, and then left. He believed she was going to the motor pool for her duties. However, investigators discovered from phone records that she never arrived there. The final message sent to Venessa's phone came from Aaron Robinson, who was also the last person to see her. He insisted he departed the base that night, heading to his off-base residence to spend time with his girlfriend, Cecily. The next morning, he returned to work at 6:30 a.m., maintaining his innocence in Venessa's disappearance. About a month after Venessa vanished, detectives interviewed a group of witnesses and gathered crucial information. Several witnesses reported seeing Aaron wrestling with a box around the base, struggling to load it into his vehicle. It became evident that Aaron David Robinson was linked to Venessa's disappearance. A report was filed and his phone was confiscated. Using a data extraction program, investigators retrieved all of the data from his phone, such as texts, images, and location histories. Phone records unveiled that Aaron made multiple calls to his girlfriend on the night of the incident, contradicting his initial claim that he was with her at home. The police questioned Cecily about Aaron's calls, and she explained she'd misplaced her phone that night, so Aaron phoned to help locate it. Detectives found her account inconsistent and presented more evidence that prompted Cecily to alter her story. She eventually confessed that they had taken a lengthy drive to Belton, Texas for stargazing and had returned home without any issues. By checking Aaron's GPS records, the police validated they had been in Texas near a bridge. Later, the phone showed movement northward for 2 hours, pinpointing areas for focused search efforts. The search began along the Leon River, where a burned plastic container and scorched ground were discovered, along with a decomposing odor, but no sign of Venessa was found. Cadaver dogs combed the area once more, with investigators theorizing that wild animals might have disturbed the site. 6 days following these fruitless searches, contractors near the Leon River stumbled upon Venessa's remains.
Confirmed that human remains were found about 20 miles from Fort Hood, and it is believed that those remains are those of 20-year-old Private Venessa Guillen, who disappeared from the base.
One of the workers noted that the remains were mixed with soil and lime, making identification challenging. The autopsy revealed that Venessa had been killed by blunt force trauma from a hammer, and her body had been dismembered and buried. Upon this discovery, detectives returned to Cecily Aguilar and interviewed her again that evening. To unravel the web of lies, Cecily confessed to the unfolding events of the murder night. On April 22nd, Aaron called Cecily and admitted to killing a female soldier at Fort Hood, placing her body in a box and leaving the base with it. He then picked up Cecily from a gas station, and together they drove to the Leon River. Arriving there, Aaron revealed the body in a box to Cecily. Initially, they tried to burn the body, but due to the fire getting out of control, they decided to dig 3 graves and bury Venessa together. It wasn't their last visit to the site. A few days later, Aaron and Cecily returned to the Leon River with concrete purchased by Venessa on Facebook. They tried to burn the remains again, dug 3 more graves, poured concrete over the body and buried it. They disposed of their clothes, cleaned up, and carried on as if nothing had happened. Just 48 hours after Venessa's disappearance, Cecily boldly posted a selfie on Instagram with the caption, "The most dangerous woman is one who doesn't need to be saved. She's never been a damsel in distress." As Cecily disclosed these grim details to the authorities, Aaron was detained in his room at Fort Hood, unaware of Cecily's cooperation. Detectives asked Cecily to call Aaron and talk about the murder. In the ensuing conversation, Aaron incriminated himself, admitting his involvement as a conspirator and the main perpetrator, which led to his subsequent arrest. On June 30th, Cecily told Aaron to stay in his room. Sensing that he was about to be apprehended, Aaron fled the base. On July 2nd, authorities found him walking down the street, but Aaron took his own life as law enforcement closed in. The FBI charged Cecily Aguilar the next day and revealed the events to the public. After 3 years of legal proceedings, Cecily was found guilty of murder in 2023 and sentenced to 30 years in prison. The motive behind this heinous crime was a burning question in the public's mind. The truth emerged 2 years after the tragic event in 2022. On the night of the incident, Venessa noticed Cecily's photo on Aaron's phone lock screen. She mentioned Cecily's marriage to another soldier, which enraged Aaron. Fearing that Venessa might expose him, he resorted to killing her with a hammer. Many have speculated that the military sought to protect its reputation and cover up the murder. Venessa's legal team argued that Aaron killed her without cause, and the army tried to suppress the truth. Fort Hood officials stated they had no evidence of Aaron harassing Venessa after the murder, dismissing the family's claims and downplaying her experiences. After Venessa's tragic death, the U.S. Congress passed the Venessa-Guillen Act, mandating independent investigations into allegations of sexual harassment and assault within the military. This law aims to improve the safety of military personnel and ensure that such allegations are taken seriously and investigated independently. Before we dive into our next story, if you could take a moment to hit that like button, it would mean the world to us. A single click for you is a huge boost of encouragement for us. We traveled to Brooklyn, a small town in Iowa with a population of 2,000. Mollie Tibbets was born on May 8, 1998, in San Francisco, California. She was raised in a loving family and had a happy childhood until the second grade, when her life took a turn. Soon after, her parents divorced, presenting Mollie with her first major challenge. She and her siblings moved to Iowa with their mother, and over time, they adjusted to their new home. Mollie attended Malcolm Middle School in town and later Brooklyn High School. In 2015, Mollie met Dalton Jack, a senior and an ambitious athlete, at a football game. They spent time together after the game and quickly fell in love. 2 years later, Mollie was accepted into the psychology program at the University of Iowa, while Dalton pursued his career in construction. After completing her first year at the university, Mollie returned home for summer break in May 2018. She worked at a regional medical center during the day and reviewed her university courses in the evenings. Despite her busy schedule, she didn't neglect her passion for running, as she had been a cross-country runner in the past. Most evenings, she would go for a run after sunset, often traveling between her mother's house and her boyfriend's place. On July 18, 2018, Mollie spent the night at the house shared by Dalton's brother and their dogs. Both Dalton and his brother were out of town for work, but the dogs needed care, so Mollie agreed to look after them for 2 days. Around 7:30 p.m., she sent Dalton a selfie, then got dressed in her running gear and headed out for her usual run through the cornfields. That day, she chose one of her regular routes, planning to run nearly 10 kilometers, surrounded by towering corn stalks. A severe storm hit the area on the night of July 18th, but the weather cleared up by the next morning. When Dalton didn't receive a response from Mollie that night, he assumed she was busy and went to sleep. The next morning, he noticed his messages were still unanswered. Dalton reached out to Mollie's family and friends, but no one had heard from her. As their worry grew, Mollie's employer called Dalton, informing him that she hadn't shown up for work, adding to their fears. It was apparent that something terrible had happened to Mollie, but no one knew what. They immediately reported her disappearance to the police. The police quickly launched a search operation, distributing missing posters throughout the town and searching the surrounding areas thoroughly. Dalton and his brother returned from their trip and decided to search for Mollie themselves, driving around the area. The recent storm gave them hope that she might have simply fallen and injured herself. Mollie's family, friends, and volunteers from across America joined the search efforts. Those who couldn't participate in person supported with donations. Investigating Mollie's life, detectives found no signs of unusual danger. She didn't use drugs or alcohol and had no known enemies. She had good relationships with her friends and family. In fact, no one had anything bad to say about her. She didn't even use foul language in her text messages. In the initial stages of the investigation, more than 40 detectives were dedicated to the case, following various leads and interviewing nearly everyone involved. The main focus was on Mollie's inner circle, which included her siblings and parents. Dalton cooperated by allowing a search of his house and car. Many locals suspected Dalton and thought he should be investigated, a common occurrence, as the boyfriend is often the prime suspect in such cases. On July 25th, the lead detective dispelled the rumors circulating in town by confirming that Dalton had been cleared as a suspect. Due to the intense heat, there was a decrease in volunteers participating in searches, leading to a shift in focus to Mollie's digital trail. A data analyst made a crucial discovery indicating that Mollie had moved approximately 10 minutes east that evening, consistent with her running pace. Later, around 8:30 p.m., her phone had traveled 8 kilometers south at a speed of about 100 kilometers per hour, suggesting a change from running to entering a vehicle. Despite the lack of new information, authorities persisted in the investigation. With only one eyewitness citing Mollie running eastward, the police had limited leads. Over time, a reward of up to $400,000 was offered for any information about Mollie's whereabouts. Several weeks later, a breakthrough occurred when a neighbor to the northeast of town provided security camera footage to the police. The footage showed a woman jogging, followed by a car heading in her direction. Subsequently, the same car returned at a greater speed. Upon analysis, it was confirmed that the jogger was Mollie. Following this discovery, authorities began monitoring the car owner, whose identity was revealed due to the town's small size. The car was tracked down, and after questioning the driver, John Budd, an officer noted his suspicious behavior. Even though John, a dairy farm worker, was allowed to leave, the police kept an eye on him as he started using his girlfriend's vehicle. A few days later, he was asked to come to the police station, where, following hours of interrogation, he confessed to his real identity as Christian Rivera. Christian, at the age of 24, immigrated from Mexico several years ago, but he did not have legal permission to work in the United States. He had been living in Iowa for quite some time, working on various farms since his arrival. At the time, he was employed at a farm near Brooklyn. Investigators continued to question him, believing he knew something about Mollie's disappearance. Christian eventually confessed that he had seen her on the evening she went missing. He saw Mollie running and decided to approach her, but she was not interested and continued on her way. After 10 hours of interrogation, Christian finally revealed the truth to the detectives. The events unfolded as follows. Christian pulled his car over, got out and ran to catch up with Mollie, then started running alongside her. Although Mollie was usually polite to strangers, she quickly sensed something was wrong and asked Christian to stay away from her. At one point, she took out her phone and threatened to call the police if he did not back off. This threat angered Christian. A side note is that Christian had no prior criminal record, and his family claimed he had never shown any violent tendencies. However, he was very afraid of being deported and facing legal consequences, so he avoided any trouble. After the threat, Christian lost control and tried to grab her. Mollie screamed as she struggled to get away. When detectives later asked what happened next, Christian said he could not remember. The only thing he recalled was driving out of town with Mollie's body in his trunk. He drove to a secluded area, took her body out of the trunk, and hid it in a cornfield, covering it with corn stalks. He then returned to the farm where he worked. Following the interrogation, Christian agreed to lead the detectives to a location outside of Brooklyn, where a horrifying discovery was made in the cornfields. They found Mollie Tibbets' partially clothed body, dressed only in a sports bra and socks. Her body had started to decompose over time. She had been stabbed 12 times in the chest, ribs, and neck. It was clear she had died in agony. In their examination of Christian's car, the police found Mollie's DNA, confirming his guilt. Although Rivera had confessed to the murder, he retracted his statement during the trial, claiming that 2 other individuals had killed Mollie. This claim prompted Christian's defense team to request a retrial, which was scheduled for May 17, 2021. During the trial, Christian alleged that detectives had coerced his confession and that two armed men had killed Mollie. However, the jury did not believe his defense, and on May 28, 2021, Rivera was found guilty of Mollie Tibbets' murder.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Christian Bahena Rivera, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
On August 30, 2021, Christian Rivera was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before we conclude this video, please be aware that the video on the left may be disturbing. It is recommended for adult viewing only. On the right, you'll find a playlist of videos that have been highly appreciated by our viewers.